A 3-year time skip. Now, I don't know about you, Kyle, but I can't imagine a better way to start off the third episode of a series, but by following a 6-month time skip with a 3-month time skip, you know? It really shows the audience that you are the dominant one here. It's a power play. It's like, we don't care about you and your attempt to get invested in this storyline. We're just gonna move forward 3 years.
We're gonna move forward, and then we're gonna have a bunch of character interactions that are gonna make no sense, and we're gonna be like, this is clever writing and storytelling. Here we can see the character progression. So we're gonna have a scene later where we do an exposition dump to explain why the characters are behaving this way by yours truly, Expedition Dump Man, who shows up when needed. My lord, I'm here to give you your daily exposition. Honestly, the chubby advisor dude is Exposition Man.
He is.
He's like, even this time, like, the king's like, oh, you're gonna tell me to marry my daughter to your son, and he's like, no, I'm here to just deliver some exposition to you. And it's like, okay, fair enough.
Alright, I am trying to give this show a chance. I really am, because I know Dev was talking about how this was good, and I do actually have some faith in Dev. Like, I do respect the man's opinion on a lot of these things. So I was like, okay, maybe I'm not seeing something. So, but, god damn it, this entire episode is just backwards. So it starts out with Daemon being frumpy and grumpy, as she is through the entire goddamn episode. Because, again, just like in episode 2 and in episode 1, nobody just gives her everything. It's like, why doesn't everyone just accept me? Why am I not a princess? Why don't I have any power? Because you never do anything. Like, it's been 3 years now since you disobeyed the king's order and took the fluffy dragon to Dragonstone, and then was like, give me the egg. Which, the egg is forgotten about too, by the way. Her deeds there is forgotten about for the last 3 years. She's just waffled around the palace looking frumpy, I guess. It's like, there's this whole thing where, are you trying to sell me off to a Lannister? How dare you, Daddy? You're trying to replace me. Alright. I need to have a bit of a winch about this. Princesses do have duties. And she come out like, oh, you go around my duties. Why do I need duties? Well, can I marry whoever I want? No, you are the princess of the realm. You are the heir apparent. You have a job. The reason why you are dressed in silk and fine soft leather and drink honeyed wine from gold goblets is because you have a position in the hierarchy of this world. You are the fucking heir. Start acting like it instead of a spoiled child.
Yep. And in today's episode, we have basically she goes off on a tangent. She throws a bit of a hissy, and her father apologizes.
Yes.
Again.
The king is just
again.
like,
This is the second time he's apologized, and he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't know what I did wrong, but clearly, you're a strong, independent woman, and I need to respect that." And it's like, and she's like, "That's not good enough."
is the issue. Like, he hasn't done anything wrong. He's set up a date for her, basically, with the most powerful individual in the realm. Like a goddamn Lannister. No, don't wanna. Okay, well, I mean, fine. But then after this, she has a whinge at him, like, you're trying to replace me. And he just like, I never. I literally never. I didn't try. I didn't say this. Like, you're my heir. I never. You may stop being such a goddamn insecure woman about it.
And he even goes on to say that I've got your back and I'm never gonna replace you. And I'm sorry that you thought I was. And she just looks at him and turns around and sassy walks away. And it's like, oh my god.
No, like, thank you, Dad, for handing me the entire fucking kingdom. Thank you for believing in me, despite me being a frumpy bitch for like 3 years and nothing. Now just turns around and goes like, I deserved that. Oh, the entitlement.
In spite of all the people who tried to convince him otherwise, he remained loyal to his firstborn daughter.
It's like, on the one hand, okay,
despite that.
Okay, I'll give the show this. If we never hear of this shit again, I'll accept it as a growth moment, okay? If she never doubts him again, I'll just be like, okay, they had to have this thing out of the way to show that both of them are serious, to undermine, to build up some further plot points. If that happens, fair enough. But right now, like, she's not a princess. She doesn't do anything a princess does. The only thing she achieves is handed to her. She flies the Dragon Zone, puts herself at tremendous risk, puts the future of the entire realm at tremendous risk, and her uncle is just like, here, have a win.
Yep.
And now, too, she wanders off into the forest. One of the king's goes after her, because it's kind of his fucking job. And then a pig is just like, hi, I'm here to give you some credit in the hunting, because I noticed you weren't doing too well, so stab me, please. And
It's
so it
really
does.
annoying. And the symbolism, remember we complained about earlier, was layered on thick last time. This episode one-ups the previous with the whole symbolism of the animal and like, oh, it's a kingly beast. And he doesn't find it for his son because his advisor's trying to push his daughter's son that he had with him and whatnot to the throne. And they're pushing that angle really hard and trying to drive a wedge between Daemon and the other girl whose name I just can't remember because they're all so forgettable. They push that angle really hard today. But the problem is there's no build-up for it because we did a 3-year time skip. And so they're trying to establish that there's going to be a conflict between these two women's, you know? But at the same time, it's one of those things where it's like, they go from being the bestest friends to just snap and like, I can barely tolerate your existence.
Last episode, they had a whole thing where it's like, oh yeah, these are super good friends, and now Daemon is just frumpy at Lady Hightower. Frumpy, did you command
Also,
my queen? I'm frumpy.
In the previous episode, they established that only like people in the council are let into that room, you know, in the king's room. At the final episode, I realized that you know the princess is there because she's the heir apparent, right? But why the hell was the tower lady there?
Because she needed to be married.
And they wanted that dramatic scene. There's no reason for her to be there because everyone has to put the little marble stones in those things in order to try to make it out to be, you know,
Official.
like, okay, only these people are allowed in here. And she's just standing there. Meanwhile, the other dude's nodding like, yeah, you're gonna marry my daughter. Not at all aware of the High Tower lady that's in the corner there.
And then, right, that was like 48 minutes of an hour-long episode was the White Stag show. And I know what George R. R. Martin is doing here, because this is his trick again. Stag shows up and looks at Daemon and goes like, you're the real queen, ooh, and then jumps off into the woods, because she refuses to kill it because it's so kingly, whilst the king is killing the other symbolism again. But it's also George R. R. Martin, so we know that this bitch is gonna die lonely and probably get eaten by a dragon or killed or stabbed or something, because in George R. R. Martin's universe, basically just assume the opposite of the usual plot lines, and you'll be pretty safe.
If you like plot twists where characters end up going out in and out of a story like a revolving door, then you'll probably like George R. R. Martin's work.
Now,
Don't get attached to any characters.
I'll give him a lot more
Unless they're
credit
plot-centric.
than Merith here does, but
Mad.
he's
No, not
really
wrong.
been dropping the ball on the politics so far. The intrigue levels here are piss puddle deep.
Hold on. Do you realize what you said earlier? You're like, oh, I'm gonna, take a different stance. That's what my take. You're literally stealing my take. You said I was being overly zealous here. Yeah, no, the politics in this episode are bad.
No,
like, it's
I
so
didn't disagree with
fucking
that. I disagree
shallow.
with you on the battle.
The battle is awful. You have no tastes and no standards in combat.
The politics is weak as shit because the only political subterfuge is who's going to be the heir. And there's no real subterfuge either. They're just asking the king, like, hey, I'd prefer this guy. And he's like, nah, I like my daughter. I'm like, okay.
No, my daughter's pretty cool, actually. And you're like, oh, okay. Okay.
Like, that is the level of political intrigue we're involved in here. But like, honestly, the whole politic part here was really boring because it barely existed, frankly. So, battle much more interesting. So, Diversity Higher and Daemon have been fighting in the Stepstones for 3 years. Somehow.
Against a small ragtag mercenary band. Like, these guys must be the best of the best. This crab dude is a tactical genius. You know, he must be a mastermind because he's outplaying like proper, well-armed and well-equipped troops from one of the most wealthiest houses in all of Westeros, and taking on a dragon like that. That's a pretty big deal.
Multiple dragons.
Hmm.
So they have a scene at the beginning where the dragon shows up and goes all angry on them and starts spitting fire. Just like we said previously, why not just send the dragons? Well, they did send the dragons, and the dragons do their job. The dragon murders a bunch of them, sets the beach on fire, and then they start firing fire arrows at the fire dragon, because that works out really well. And Daemon gets injured because he refuses to carry a goddamn shield into battle, or build a hut on the back of his dragon, or take any protective measures whatsoever. Dragon's fine. Dragon doesn't care.
Yep.
And
Dragon doesn't give a shit.
later, they have a little war council meeting, and they try to explain why they've been having so much trouble for the last 3 goddamn years here. So, the stepstone terrain looks pretty awful, right? There's the stepstones. There's been a bunch of little desolate islands, and the crab feeder is ensconced on one of these little desolate islands. All right. And like there are archers up on high, they can fire arrows down on us. The dragons don't work because they just retreat into the caves because then they get cover. All right. How big are these caves? Because the way that the American army, for example, dealt with the Japanese caves in World War II was to point a flamethrower at it.
Yep, because what happens is, turns out fire sucks up all the oxygen, and so what happened to the Japanese soldiers inside those caves is they actually all just sort of suffocated and died.
Yes, there are 2 big problems with hiding in a cave when the enemy has a dragon. One,
You will not be safe in that cave.
yes, there's only so much oxygen inside of that cave. Even if you have different openings as well, like the amount of oxygen that will be sucked out of the cave will be catastrophic. And 2,
Yep.
it'll even if there are different engines there, right? Let's assume there's tons of fissures in these rocks because they kind of show that, right? So let's think oxygen on a larger scale isn't a problem so long as they shelter deep within it. All right. Here's another thing. Caves are naturally insulated because they are caves. What happens when you put a 250 degrees flamethrower into 1 or 2 of those entrances and just kind of keep breathing for a while?
It's gonna heat up, and it's gonna heat up quickly.
Yes.
And apparently they've been doing the siege for a while, so the temperature inside that damn fucking thing would be like a little oven.
Yeah, literally, just have the dragons just chill by one of the entrance and keep going, Dracarys, we're in there for a little bit, okay? Do that every day for a few weeks. The temperature inside will be ridiculous. And as far as I know, the ocean here is salt water. So how are they getting fresh water? How are they getting food? The stepstones themselves are desolate. The sea snake has a massive navy, the largest in Westeros. He's the richest man in Westeros. Surely you could just blockade them? Did they have 3 years worth of supplies on this goddamn rock?
That I sincerely doubt. Even some of the most, well-fortified citadels in feudal history, 3 years is a long time to go.
Long
And there's
time.
been sieges that go longer than that, but generally the thing is they're able to send out sorties, they're able to gather food, they're able to, occasionally get resupplies. But the fact that they have naval supremacy kind of makes that not possible. And the fact that they put themselves on a small island means that there's not going to be any sorties. They're not going to be able to send out raids to get food. They're not going to be able to get resupplied. They're completely encircled.
Yeah, like, this isn't a good spot for them at all.
They're kind of just screwed. Now, one thing they could have said is that they eat the crabs, I guess, but even then, they would exhaust that food supply rather quickly.
Yeah, sure. And hey, the sea snake's army is starving, because they point that out. Like, he's got, how many? Let me check. 700 footmen and 60 knights. So he's got less than 1,000 men, and they're running out of food.
They've exhausted the local food supplies, and they're sieging them. So, I have no idea what they're doing.
And the thing too is,
Food.
what you should do here is say, okay, right, archers on the high ground, which are pelting you with arrows as you land. Fair enough. What you do is you land your troops, then you have the dragons just keep clearing the highlands with their flames, which they end up doing, and then just march your dudes up to the front of the caves. There you go.
Which is exactly what they do to take it, which is like, why didn't you do that to begin with?
This isn't difficult. Like, the attackers have vast equipment superiority too. Like, the defenders are wearing leather and shit. Like, literally, just have your knights with spears just start pushing down these narrow confines with large shields. You'll be fine. Like, it's stupid. And how is all of this resolved? Well, the kings and oh god, that was another thing too. So they make a ploy out of this early on that the king can't send aid to the stepstones because it'll make him look weak, which is ridiculous. His vassal and brother are getting their asses kicked by a bunch of random ass savages, and he will make the king look weak to save them? What?
Yeah, that was a very weird angle they tried to push. If anything, the king has all the bargaining power now because they're actually one of the vassals is pleading for aid now.
Yeah,
so they're basically on their knees now. Now is the time for strength. Now is the time for the king to go like, I will grant you this, but you know, you, my brother, you relinquish all your titles. Like you're just gonna be a little, you know, fuckboy, and vassal, like you're my little bitch for life now.
Yeah, plenty of demands, you know, and it'll make him look strong if he rescues his vassals from this position of weakness, because it shows that he does what they couldn't. And Daemon's reaction to his king's offer of help shows that this is exactly what he thinks too. Because he beats the shit out of the messenger, and first like, okay, that was weird. But he does it because he knows that if the king manages to get there, if the king's troops arrives, it's no longer his army. It's no longer his victory. It's the king's victory.
Yep. Which is why he does what he does. But the problem with the whole battle itself is it's rather stupid.
So, okay, Daemon then gets driven to do something extreme. Right, fair enough. Like, I actually don't mind this setup. Like, Daemon has his vanity hurt, so he goes off to do something crazy, where he rows over alone, seemingly, to the Stepstone Island, and he pretends to surrender / ask for parley, and then pulls out his weapon and starts fucking killing randos, you know? After which follows a very standard medieval retard battle with the hero, where the enemy sends out small groups of men one by one.
Yep. So they have archers on the cliff, all aiming at Daemon, like dozens of them. I'm not gonna say hundreds because it's really hard to see. Probably dozens of them, scores of them, right? And there's tons of swordsmen surrounding Daemon. Daemon slaughters the swordsmen with ease, and the archers begin to shoot, and they miss, and then they hit him when it's the time for them to hit. But the crab dude sends out wave of dudes, and he looks at the cave and he's like, only 5 of you. Like he does a nod to like 5 dudes, and 5 dudes piecemeal, and he does another 5, until finally Daemon's at that point where he's weakened, and he's like, oh, Daemon weak. I've been hit by an arrow that went through my breastplate. It was cheap, okay? It wasn't well made. So, and then Daemon basically looks out and is like, oh no, I'm surrounded. But, of course, the dragon comes and burns them because it was all part of the plan. And the crab dude, who's carefully paying attention to listening to make sure if he can hear dragons or not, because he's been under siege by them for 3 years, somehow just, doesn't notice anything.
Yeah, he kind of missed out on that. But here's the thing. I don't even necessarily mind that part, right? Okay, so Daemon's desperate. He goes off and he does something stupid and desperate. And I don't even think it was a plan.
That's fine.
Because it isn't really presented like a plan. And
it's sort of like a spur-of-the-moment thing.
Yeah, and the dude not hearing the dragon, I'm kind of fine with that as well. Like, he's used to hearing them. He probably knows what they sound like. But it's a fucking dragon. He can fly at 1,000 feet plus and then just like, whoop, swoop down. Fair enough. And it's not even Daemon's dragon, it's other dragons. What pisses me off is, somehow, whilst this is happening, they move the entire army over the stepstones.
Mm-hmm. And they follow Daemon. By the way, Daemon, who's doing this, there's no plan. He runs literally right away from the planning table after he beats that soldier. Yeah. And then begins rowing as fast as he can, gets over there, and all this happens. And meanwhile, and the reaction of everyone back there was like, all right, he's going over there. It's part of the plan. The plan is that we're all going to go together and we're going to reinforce them. This is actually a ploy to trick them to come out. Like, show, are you skipping a few steps here?
None of that is planned out. And the thing is, too, how Like, okay, so he's got 700 footmen, 60 knights. Okay, so looking at the group they brought over, they all look fairly well equipped. There's not that many of them, so let's assume they didn't bring the footmen, right? Because there's no way they'd transport 700 men across that narrow piece of sea. Like, they don't have.
There's no way they'd load them into the boats in time to get over there.
Like 700 men, that'll take you hours to load.
Honestly, they probably couldn't even load the 60 knights if they were lucky. Maybe they could get like 30.
Yeah,
and they're like, all right, sail now, you know?
We'll assume the 60 knights, right? Okay. They have 60 knights, let's assume like five to a rowboat. They need like 30 rowboats. Okay. Feasible. But surely the defenders would have spotted this? Like 30 rowboats of heavily armed knights?
The guys on the high ground who are looking over and watching out, right, this entire time, don't notice it.
The guys currently shooting a Daemon.
The guys that can clearly see across the water, and they don't notice the boats. On top of that, they also show in a scene prior some 3 ships going by the island being bombarded by some sort of mortar catapults that lob really high in the air, by the way. That's incredible.
Very, very high lobby catapults, yes.
Very accurate fire. Double strike on one of the boats. So that's pretty good. But where the best part is, they show the defenders have these. But when we get over to the island, there's no onagers or there's no, trebuchets or whatever the heck those were. Like, a part of me was wondering if there was like magical fireballs or something, because they were behaving like little cruise missiles, sort of guiding into the boats.
Yep. None of that shows up. And again, when you look at the stepstones, like, it is obvious, like, they have completely unimpeded line of sight. They would have seen those rowboats of knights on the other shore. It's so stupid. It's made all the worse, too, because they just overrun them like it's nothing. They kill them. It's not difficult. Like, they don't take heavy casualties. The battle is never in doubt. They never start flagging. There's no sign of them, like, starting to lose or anything. Just these 60 knights take on the entire garrison as Daemon wanders into the caves by himself and kills the crab dude. How could they not have done this previously? This war is very dumb. It's very dumb.
It's annoying because they built up the crab dude since like episode 1 to be this big like threat that was looming. And it's like, send the dragons will defeat them. Then they send the dragons, and the dragons don't do jack shit. And it's like, okay, crab commander dude is like really, really smart. Like, he's outwitting like these seasoned, like or not seasoned, because actually they're actually fairly green because they haven't been in a war in a while. He's outwitting these guys. He's seasoned, and they can't figure out how to deal with him. They outnumber him like 30-1. They got fucking dragons on their side. They're surrounded. How is he holding out? And then they just do this very obvious attack, and apparently that's good enough.
Yeah.
It's like, did they even try?
They could have. That's the thing too. There was nothing unique about these circumstances. Like, okay, the only unique thing is that maybe his army's a little bit more out in the open, but so what? Like, in total, they bring out maybe 100 guys. Like, the attackers heavily outnumber them. Like, there's no reason why they should be struggling with this. There's no reason why the attacker should be running out of food before the defender.
It's quite impressive. Like, I would have expected them to be like, they're all eating crabs. I mean, a crab-based diet. I don't want to know, how their tummies feel after, 3 years of that.
Yeah, like, the attacker, the sea snake, he has the largest navy. Must have complete naval superiority. They should be able to maintain their supply lines, no issues, and yet they're starving and the defender's fine. Like, it's
annoying. It feels like this whole thing is just like a side character, which it is, to establish, Daemon is he's in the game still. He's not out of the Game of Thrones, so to speak.
And hey,
but it's one of those things where it's like, it was handled so
I can see the political implication as well, because now Daemon has an actual achievement under his spells. He killed the crab feeder, and he did so without the crown's help. And here's the thing, helping them would have demonstrated the crown's strength. Now the crown looks weak because now his vassals, his brother who's trying to claim the throne, did what he couldn't.
Mm-hmm. Which is still silly that the whole time when they're pleading for aid, they're like, no, I'm not going to send aid.
It's like, after a year or two, like, weak. And again, they were pleading. Like, if he was smart, he wouldn't even have sent a letter. He's just 1,000 dudes would have shown up and been like, yep, it's our army now.
Yep, the king's assuming direct control.
What could they have done about it, other than bitch and cry?
Yeah, honestly, I have no idea why the king didn't show up himself with his own personal retinue along with his army and be like, I'm gonna take over now.
Oh, because the king's stupid, I suppose. So another thing too. Okay, so the king was literally rotting in episode 1. In episode 2, his pinky was falling over. He looks remarkably spry for having been rotting from the inside out for 3 years.
Listen, like I said before, Arch, his rotting arc is taking a pause because it needed to pause so that we could skip 3 years. So that he could have a son, and so that there could be tension between his daughter and forgettable character lady he married. And that needs to be, that's important because those two are supposedly good friends. Not that we'd know this unless we Googled it. Yes. Because the show didn't fucking tell anybody this, but they were very, very, very good friends. And now they're not very good friends anymore. They don't like each other.
See, it's easy to remember these names, Kyle. It's Lady Frumpus and Lady Hightower.
Lady Frumpus and Lady Hightower. Her name's not Hightower, though.
Her last name
Frank
is?
Or something. That's a stupid name.
Also,
why do you name yourself the Tower?
Well, because her clan is like the Hightower. Like, her house is the Hightower, because they've got a high tower. Like, derp.
No.
Dumbass.
The Hightower people, genocide them. They're not worth living. They're savages. Barely even human.
I am not seeing what Dev is seeing in this show. I really am not. Like, and as they too, I didn't even necessarily mind the battle. It was retarded, but at least I know what the show is trying to do here, and I'm willing to give some levity when it comes to plot armor because every show does it. And seeing Daemon like pushed to his brink that he has to do some retarded ploy. Okay, fair enough, but I would have liked if that was a little bit more thought out. Like, honestly, I would have given him more credit if he'd pulled Diversity Hire aside first and gone like, okay, I'm gonna do something really crazy now, and then cut to him rowing, maybe. But then that would undermine his character as just the crazy person too, I guess.
He just runs off and does things, and it's so out of the ordinary. Thankfully, every soldier was on board, and the other guys were on board like, yes, this is all a clever ploy. Like, it's very convenient. Like, the thing is, Daemon doing what he did is within character. There's nothing wrong with that. Everybody else so happened just having to, like, this is clearly the strategy now. This is going to be the battle plan that worked. Let's commit all our forces to it. That's the part that's just sort of like, that's out of the blue, especially when in a scene prior, they're focusing on the fact that there's a distrust level between the prince and them now.
Yes.
There's fracturing going on, but they establish this, but they do nothing with this, and then they undermine it a few scenes later. And it's like, why did you show me this scene only to just undermine it 5 seconds later?
Yes. And I will give the show this too. There's one very nice little touch that I do like. At least it appears to be. It's a little bit difficult to see precisely, but when we first see the crab feeder, he looks, a bit malformed, but normal. When we look at him on the island, he's been very clearly like heavily burned, presumably by dragon fire. I mean, it looks like he's got third-degree burns across like most of his face. He shouldn't be ambulatory at this point, but details schmeetails. So that was a nice touch. It showed at least that the defenders had taken some damage.
Yeah, when I'm looking at it, I think he's different than before. But it would have been nice had the show not did the 3-year time skip.
Honestly,
And we got to a little bit more story here.
this war should have been his own episode. Like, okay, so he's really fucking smart. He manages to outsmart them all the time. Or maybe they're just simply really inept because they're Green Knights. Sure, okay.
That's true,
Show
yeah.
us that. Show them fucking up. Show them, okay, maybe they've run out of food because they got all of their supply ships sunk because he managed to outflank them with a clever maneuver. Something like that. Because then I'd be like, yeah, no, you've explained why they're being pushed to the brinks. You've shown me why, instead of just told me, like, oh, we're running out of food. Ow.
Yeah, it is kind of annoying that they just don't really show you anything.
Yeah.
The show has the same problem we talked about since episode 1. Exposition dump and just telling you. It's like this, and then this, and then this, and then this. And this episode sort of just keeps following in line with that. Like they're just trying to just get through this as quickly as possible so they can get it over with.
Yes. I'm not a fan of the pacing or the general storytelling.
I was kind of hoping they'd slow down, because I was hoping that the first 2 episodes were like, okay, we're establishing the characters, like, we just want to get the ball rolling. It's like, yeah, I really don't like that pacing, but, like, okay, whatever. But it seems like we're 3 episodes in now, and they're continuing to do the same strategy. My fear now is that this is going to be the norm. I hope I'm wrong, and that the next episode is not a time skip. Like, it's okay if it's like a month or 2, but like 3...
Give us another 6 months time skip or something. I'd love it.
But at least 6 months isn't as long as 3 years. See, I complained about the 6-month one last time because I thought that was absurd. And then we get 3 years here.
But hey, on the bright side, there has been more well-established characters in this show than the Rings of Power.